All right, I was watching a great YouTube video where our Prime Minister, Mr. Trudeau, sits down with a guy by the name of Paul Kershaw. Now, this guy is part of an advocacy group called Generation Squeeze. Their argument is that first-time buyers, millennials, they've been priced out of the market, and we need to even the playing field here. Now, before I get into this, I have nothing personal against Paul Kershaw. He's probably a nice enough guy, but I will tell you from my perspective, he is a, for sure, left-wing socialist radical. He's a liberal NDP supporter. I put him the same playbook as Mr. Trudeau or Jagmeet Singh or David Eby or any of these guys. And I think this ideology is very, very dangerous here. They were talking about this eliminating the principal residence exemption. So as you guys know, when you own your home, you live in it, you enjoy it for the next 10, 15, 20, 30 years, you don't pay a dime of capital gains on that. And it's really the only break we get in Canada, which I'll get into here. So Bob Rennie has been warning about this for a long time. Bob Rennie, the condo king, I've been following him a long time. And he's been saying, look, there's just in Metro Vancouver alone, over 440 billion, that's billion with a B, dollars in clear title equity. There are no mortgage outstanding. And there's going to be a massive transfer, largest intergenerational transfer of wealth in history. This is going to be massive, and governments are going to want a piece of the action. They're going to want their pound of flesh. Governments at all levels. And he's been warning about an equity tax for a long time, that he sees this coming down the pipeline here. So the argument, of course, is from Generation Squeeze, is that baby boomers, they won the lottery here, which they didn't. They struggled and strived. You know, it was not easy even back in the day. But they won the lottery, and somehow they owe the millennials something. The millennials are hard done by. They can't get into the market. Listen, I know it's frustrating. It's a very different market than it was 30 or 40 years ago. But a couple of things that I don't like about this. First of all, the principal residence exemption is the last break that we get in Canada. RRSPs are great, but you're capped at your annualized contribution. Your principal residence gains are going to be unlimited. Most people, when they go to retire, their RRSP and their stock portfolio is not going to be their biggest asset. Their biggest asset and their nest egg is going to be in their home. The second thing I don't like about this, people always say to me, well, in the US, they don't get that same exemption. A very different system in the US, though. They get to deduct mortgage interest. It's all tax deductible on their primary residence. In Canada, yes, you can deduct mortgage interest on an investment property, but not on your home. The bigger issue, though, is that we are absolutely obliterated, crushed on our income taxes. We pay far higher income taxes than in the US. That's why we have that exemption. It's the only break that we really get, and now they want to take that back. If they do want to eliminate that exemption, I would say fine, but if you're going to do that, slash the income tax, slash the capital gains inclusion rate down from 67% to 20 or 30%. Then we can have that conversation. But they'll never do that because this government has basically bankrupted Canada, this Trudeau and Chrystia Freeland. But getting back to this interview, they had this Paul Kershaw, he had an infographic, and it was unlike any infographic I've ever seen. It didn't look like a stock chart, or it looked like something you would present to a toddler. It had animals, it had a Tyrannosaurus Rex on it. I've never seen an infographic like this. I think it was brutal. This interview was, if they weren't embarrassed, they should have been. It was awful. And the funny thing about it was, there was supposed to be a Q&A, and when the interview started, they said at the end of it, there's going to be a question and answers period. That never materialized. They must have cut that out. So one has to wonder what happened in that Q&A. Probably somebody brought up some good points and made them look pretty bad, if they didn't already. But, if Trudeau does get in another term, yes, I do see, because people ask me all the time, how safe is that principal residence exemption? If Trudeau gets in, I could see changes there. If the Conservatives get in, though, which is looking more and more increasingly likely, I think there's pretty well zero chance. because the conservatives are just ideologically opposed to this kind of thing. We saw that when Pierre Poilievre railed against this change to the capital gains inclusion rate, which I've done a few videos on this. A little while ago, they used to be you were taxed on 50% of the gain on an investment property. They changed that now to 67%. 50% was already too high. But, he was railing against that as well as all of the, basically any economist with half a brain was saying this is a dumb idea because you're going to drive capital flight. You're going to have investment capital leave Canada. And I saw this. I saw a lot of investors sell investment properties trying to get ahead of this tax. They cashed out because they had hundreds of thousands of dollars in capital gains. They were getting below market rents. Let's just get out of this business, which is what I did years ago. And of course, they're not going to sell to an investor. They're probably going to sell to an end user, and that tenant's going to be out of there. Good luck trying to find another place to rent in BC. It's crazy. People wonder why it's so difficult to find a rental in BC or find a rental in Vancouver. Well, this is why. We have a left-wing radical socialist government pretty well across the board. We've got the BC Liberals, and then, the Liberals in Canada, at the federal level. Then we have the BC NDP, which is brutal. I mean, these guys are absolutely brutal. They're inventing names now. Safe supply. There's no such thing as safe supply. Unreal. But yeah, hostile business climate. Tenants have all the rights. And I'll tell you this, if I was going to invest in the TSX, the Toronto Stock Exchange, versus the States, the S&P Standard & Poor's 500, there's no contest. You're buying companies like Apple and Johnson & Johnson and Visa, MasterCard. There's no way that I would allocate capital to Canada, especially not in BC. So I guess one silver lining here, though, is I don't think that the Liberals are going to get another term. I think we are going to have a conservative government, and I think if that's the case, the principal residence exemption is fairly secure. They're not going to eliminate that. The other silver lining here is that in BC, it's tough because we're the left coast. There's a lot of lefties, a lot of David Eby supporters, and they've got a big war chest. But I'll tell you, the recent polls are shifting now, and I think this John Rustad, conservative, is going to give David Eby a run for his money. So things could change in BC as well. I'm Jay Coupar. Feel free to comment below or subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video.